Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I was born in the UK and alhamdulillah I've been blessed by Allah to live in the UAE, Saudi, Turkey, and now I'm in Algeria. So I've been able to live and move to all those different Muslim countries. But the only way that was possible is that I have an online income. I have a way of earning money that is not tied to the country I'm living in. So for example, when I decided to leave the UAE and move to Turkey in 2021, I packed my bags, I flew over to Turkey in the middle of COVID, and the next day I was able to jump on my laptop on a work meeting and get back on with work as normal. When I did my kind of honeymoon thing when I got married, I did a holiday in Malaysia. After 7 to 10 days of just hanging out and chilling and doing the touristy things, I rented an Airbnb in Kuala Lumpur and I got to work as usual. When my mum was ill and living in the UK before she passed away, rahimahullah, I was able to visit her even though I still needed to be working. I was able to fly from Turkey to the UK many times while she was ill, and alhamdulillah I was able to be with her for her last moments in this dunya. And all of this is because alhamdulillah I have an online income, I have a business. And you're probably watching this video because this is one of your biggest barriers to moving countries, moving to the Muslim world from the UK, US, wherever you're from. And so in this video, I'm going to take you through all the options you have, the pros, the cons of different things, and how it can work for you, inshallah, and why it's so important to have this type of income. So in the past, people always thought that if they're going to move to a Muslim country, it might be kind of like the Saudi or UAE model, where you have to look for a job in that country and you'll get a job with a company and the company will basically sponsor you and get you that residency permit. That is how I grew up in the UAE. My dad had a job in a university and he would get like 2-year contracts, and so he would get 2-year residency permits. But every 2 years, we never knew if it would be renewed or not. We never knew if we would be staying or not. And it gave us quite a lot of instability, to be honest with you. But even though it was renewed every year or 2 years, we still ended up staying there for, I stayed 16 plus about 3 years, so 19 years in total. My dad stayed there 23 years working that whole time. Even though we felt unstable, we actually ended up staying there a very long time. But today, that's not the case. Today, with all the opportunities that are available, even working or with business, you can have an online income and you can stay in many of these countries taking advantage of different residency permit options that they have that are not tied to a job. And the benefit of this is that you don't always want to be relying on a source of income in that country, because if that country doesn't work out, if that you change your mind about that country, if after a year in the country you realize it's not right for you, it's not the end of your hijrah. It's not the end of your journey to live outside of your country that you came from. You can move to another Muslim country. But for a lot of people, that when they lost their job in Saudi or UAE or whatever, the only way for them was to leave the country and go back to where they came from. But with an online income, like I said, I left the UK after going there to study around 2012. I left the UK to UAE, but when I decided to leave UAE, I didn't have to go back to UK. I went to Turkey, and from Turkey, I'm now in Algeria. And so I do not have to go back to the UK or any specific country because my income is online. So the flexibility that it gives you is really powerful in that if you decide to leave that Muslim country, you can always just go to a different Muslim country. Not to mention, a lot of the countries that you might be considering, like Egypt, like Morocco, like, I don't know, Malaysia, maybe the opportunities to make decent money so you can live comfortably in those countries are quite rare. Even Turkey, there are not many jobs for foreigners at all in Turkey. But if you have a job or an online income of some sort, you can live in those countries even without a local job. I will say though, the flip side of having a local job is that when you're in the workplace, that's where a lot of the socializing goes on. That's where you learn about the culture and about the people, or maybe even learn the language by being forced to go to work and mix with those people. That's something that I was never afforded. In the UAE, I worked, but for a very short period of time. And in Turkey, again, I never worked there. I worked on my business. And so I was never forced to go and mix with people. But a lot of, for example, the Syrians in Turkey, because they're forced to work, they actually work or do business in the country, they integrate very much with the Turks. They speak the language, they know the Turkish culture, unlike me. Now you might be wondering, what are my options when it comes to online income? Because online income splits into two types. One is getting a remote job and one is starting an online business. A remote job is just a job like the job you might have now, but they allow you to work remotely. Now, the most common ones, and I know a lot of people who do this, is to teach English online. So you might be working for a university, or you might just be a tutor, or you might even be a secondary school teacher, but you're working for like an online school, and they allow you to do that job remotely. And I know a lot of people that are in this role, a few in Turkey, one in Egypt, etc., that they have jobs. They don't have businesses. They have jobs as teachers, and they are able to do that online. Sometimes they have to work crazy hours. Like a friend of mine, he starts work at 5 p.m. Turkey time because he teaches for a school in the US. But the salary that you get paid is often quite good compared to the country you're living in, and that allows you to, provide for yourself and your family while you're there. Another job that I've heard people do while abroad is development. So there were developers, people who would, do back-end development, front-end development, whatever, build apps, softwares, websites, whatever. They would do that as a job, and they were working remotely. They were allowed to do that. And another thing I've heard is customer service. Sometimes people, they want to hire natives from that country. So I think this brother was French, and he was working for a French call center, but he was doing it from remotely. So he was living in Turkey while doing that work. And again, the work hours might have been a bit inconvenient, but in the end, he was able to get a French salary working for a French company, but living in Turkey. So these are the kind of jobs that I've heard people do as remote workers. And another one I just thought of is project manager. So someone I know, they're experienced project manager, and they were able to work that job remotely. They would be having all their calls, they'd be doing their usual stuff, sometimes at very inconvenient times. Like they would start work, I think, at 4 or 5 a.m. to match the time zone of the country they worked with. But in the end, it allowed them to have that good salary and still live in the Muslim world where they wanted to be. So that is the online jobs world. And I think there are a lot of options for that. I think since Corona is over, like a lot of those opportunities have kind of slowed down, but it's not something to dismiss. It's something to think, okay, if I do this job now, is there a way that I could do that remotely? Is there a way that even if I took a pay cut, could I do that remotely? Could I negotiate that with my current employer? Or could I just look for jobs in my industry, in my field, and see if they're open to doing remote? And you have to be a bit creative and resourceful with this. Apply for normal jobs and go to normal interviews, and in the interview ask them, would you be open to a remote working setup? And they might say straight up no. They might kind of hesitate on it, and in that case you could even say, well, what if the income was a bit lower, but I was able to work remotely or something like that? Or maybe, every few months you would come to the country, but mostly you were working remotely. Anything like that, try it, ask for it. Those who don't ask, they don't get. So that's for jobs, remote jobs. Now, when it comes to online business, this is something that I have a lot of experience in, because this is the way that I've been able to live in the Muslim world for all of these years. Since 2017-ish, I've been doing business full time. So it's been my main source of income. As some people will know, I actually help people to start businesses as well. And I've started about 3, you could say, successful businesses myself over the years. And there are so many online businesses you could start, of course, but some of the best ones to begin with is like an agency or a service business. This is a business where you're basically offering a service that can be done online to businesses around the world. So that could be developing websites. It could be doing different marketing work for people, like creating content, editing videos, even training salespeople. All of these jobs can be done online. So you can offer this service online, and that could be your business. That's basically an agency. An agency is just a type of business that does services for other businesses. That's what an agency is. There's also a recruitment agency, which is a business that finds employees for businesses. That's a very good place to get started. The reason being is you don't need as much credibility or trust or authority in an industry to get clients for this. Why? Because they're not necessarily hiring you because you're amazing at that job and you're the genius at that job and they need your advice on that area. They're hiring you for your hands, not for your brain. There's always an appetite to hire hands, to just hire someone that will just get the job done. Even if the job isn't done perfectly, even if it's lower quality, whatever, there's always an appetite for, I will do it for you. Right? That's why done-for-you businesses, service-based businesses, they're very easy to get into in that sense. Is there a lot of people go out there offering these services to businesses? Yes, there is. But, it definitely, there's always space to innovate. Some of the people messaging me, offering me their services as a business owner myself, some of the messages are very badly done and some of them are a bit better done. And so that attracts my attention more. And so this is a really good place to start. Also, if you have a bit more money to spare, maybe you're a little bit more business savvy, maybe you've worked in sales or marketing in your job, then maybe you could get into physical product business, e-commerce. Even though it's a physical product business, you can do it online if you set it up like that. So you could have a fulfillment center in the UK, in the US, in whatever country you want to sell to, and you could just do all the marketing and the managing of the stock and everything online. Right? Physical products business. I think a really good opportunity in the physical product space is health, anything health related. Also, in my opinion, you want to go for something which is a bit unique. It really solves a proper problem for people, unlike like printed t-shirts or those kind of products. You want something that is, let's say, at least sells for at least like $70, $80 or more, and it solves a real problem. And ideally, it's something that's refillable. Right, so something that's consumable and people would have to buy, when they finish that, they have to buy more and then have to buy more. But alternatively, it could be just a really good product that solves a solid health problem, for example, that's sold for $200. Maybe you get $100 and something profit out of that, and you can make a solid business from that, just using Shopify as your website and then doing your marketing either through content or through ads, email marketing, both, etc. That's how you could do a physical product business. But again, that requires a bit more money, a bit more investment. And the third type is an info or coaching business. Now, information is becoming less and less valuable every single day. YouTube is full of very valuable videos for how to do things. ChatGPT also will tell you how to do things. But coaching is something that is becoming a bit more valuable because people have so much information and so many strategies and methods on how to do things. They need someone to kind of guide them and give them personalized advice on what's best for them, what's best for their situation. And so that's where coaching comes in. Also, since Corona, people have just, I think they value a lot more the personal touch from somebody, someone who's going to tell you about your specific situation and a human just to talk to, even if it's remotely, even if it's over a call, people need that. And also people value coaching because there's a level of accountability. There's a level of another human being expecting you to take action, expecting you to implement what you said you would implement, right? So coaching businesses are great as well. If you can coach or consult people through solving a problem like lower back pain, like weight loss, like growing their business, like building muscle, like overcoming addiction. These are all the types of problems that you can charge people to solve as a coach, right? As a coach or a consultant. So this is the third type of business that I would kind of recommend. There are other businesses you might think of like software. What if I make a software? Software, if you're in that field, that might be relevant to you. But if you're just trying to like make hijra and get out of your job and get out of your country, then the software is definitely going to require a lot of money and a lot of time. So it's definitely not going to be a quick one. I suppose you could have a physical location business in the UK, for example, and have it operate without you there. You could hire a manager, or maybe you have a family member or something who's doing business with you and they're staying put and you could move. I know someone doing that, for example, from Germany. His partner, who's staying in Germany, he's not really going to leave Germany. And he works from Lebanon, doing his role in the business. And his partner is in Germany, overseeing the warehouse and the stock and all of that stuff. So that also works. You could have like a physical business as well if you find the right partner on the ground who's going to stay put and manage it. But I feel like with business or even with remote jobs, there's a mental block that people need to overcome. And especially with the service business that I said is a really good place to start. You need to understand that your job right now is a service business in a way. You're offering a service to the company that you work for. If you're an accountant, you're offering accounting services for your company. So it shouldn't be a big mental jump or leap to then just offer businesses accounting services, just how you're offering your employer accounting services. You see what I mean? So think of how your current job could be done as a consultant or as a freelancer. Right? I know some people who've approached their company and say, look, I'm working for you now as a full-time employee. Could we just change the arrangement so you hire me as a freelancer and they pay you as another company, basically? There's some benefits for them in doing that, and there could be some benefits for you in doing that as well. And that allows you to maybe take on more clients, different clients, and work with a bit more flexibility. Because of course, if you're an employee, they could insist that you're coming into the office. But if you're a freelancer that they hire, there might be less commitment to you, but at the same time, they might not force that you have to come in the office. So that's one reason people might do that. But yeah, just get over that mental block. You're offering services, whether you're an employee or you're a freelancer or you're an agency service business, you're all just offering services to businesses in the end. And even if this journey of finding that, whatever that online income is for you, even if that takes 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, it's worth it. You know, I'll end with this story of this brother. He was with me in Turkey in the early days. When I first got there, he was already there. And he's half Turkish, and he lived in Australia for his whole life. And he decided to move to Turkey. And after about, I want to say 2-3 years living there, he decided to go back to Australia, because the whole time, 2-3 years living in Turkey, he had no income. He wasn't working at all because he had a hands-on job. His business in Australia was installing solar panels and maintaining solar panels. And he was doing very good in that business, and he had a lot of savings. And that's how he was able to live in Turkey for all that time without making money. But eventually he said, look, I need to sort this out. Like, this problem of making money is not going to go away. I've just been procrastinating on different ways of making money online since I've been in Turkey. So I'm going to go back to Australia, do my solar work, and save up money and buy a few properties. And that's how I'm going to sustain myself in Turkey. So although he's gone back to Australia, which is not the best, and he's been there now for 3-4 years, he's not come quickly back to Turkey. Inshallah, he still has that intention. And I just heard the news that he bought his first property in Turkey recently. So inshallah, even though it's taking quite a long time, inshallah, then when he does come to Turkey, he'll be in a more stable situation. So this is what some people are doing. Real people that I know, they are making these decisions to sort out their income once and for all, so that when they come to the Muslim world, they don't have to worry about leaving. So think about it. What is your path for that online income? Is it a job? Is it an agency? Is it a service? Is it working as a freelancer? Write it in the comments, your ideas so far, and maybe we can help each other out. Assalamu alaikum, and look forward to future videos on Hijrah, living globally, etc.